I'm very privileged to give you now Dr. Susan Wallace.
That's the most beautiful thing. Wow, I don't have anything to say now. Okay, you all know my intellectual ability on computers. To get past this slide is going to be a real challenge. Can you hear me? Yes, you can. I don't need that, do I? Okay. I left this up here because our first president of the Forensic Society in 1999 came up with this, and we just think it's absolutely beautiful and personifies everything that we believe in as forensic science students. Okay, here it goes. Okay. Oh, no, I need to do that. Thank you, Aaron. Okay. Isn't that exciting? What we hear so often on this campus and across the nation is, what is forensic science? I want from the students on campus will come in, I'm a biology major, I'm a chemistry major, and I want to be a forensic scientist. Well, what do you want to do? Well, I don't know, I want to be a forensic scientist. So we get Randy, our wonderful lab director that runs the entire department, our major, gets these emails daily, I want to be a forensic scientist, and they really don't know what that is. And so I wanted to explain a little bit about that today and then show you some of the fun things that we do and some of the accomplishments you all have made. Okay. Oh. This is too much to remember. Okay, if you take it literally, forensic science means this, okay? And you could read, I'm not going to read all of it to you, but that's what it actually stands for. When we put this major together back in the middle 90s, 1995, I believe we started thinking about it, it's because I was working on cases for the state of Texas as an anthropologist, and I was seeing a lot of traumatic things, and I was seeing a lot of death, things that were very moving. And being on the pre-med advisory board, I was also interviewing pre-med students. So I thought, if I'm getting this opportunity and a few of my anthropology majors are getting this opportunity, these students should have this opportunity too, because they're going to medical school. And can they take it? Well, you know, you go into medical school and you think, oh, this is going to be fun and exciting, but have you ever seen death? And they would go, well, I changed the sheets in the emergency room, or I saw somebody throw up one time. So I thought, how fantastic to put together a major that included everything that fell under the umbrella of the American Academy of Forensic Science, which is, covers every discipline under forensics. I got it. Okay, first of all, we have criminalistics. That's the investigators that go out, start a case from the beginning to end. There's a whole section in the academy under criminalistics. We have engineering sciences. Why would that be forensics? I got all of you out here to answer my questions. Why does that fall under it? Like the World Trade Center is a perfect example. Bridges collapse all the time. We have train wrecks. We have buildings collapse. We have all kinds of things that have to do with engineering. So that's a very important part of forensics, where people lose their lives. Under the general section, that's where you get your medical legal death investigators. Under jurisprudence, those are our lawyers. They're very fun to go listen to their papers. Odontology, one of the most important ones. What preserves most after fires, death, an airplane crash, mass disasters? Of course, it's teeth. Okay. And what about other things that happen? Why would a forensic anthropologist be important? Bite marks are very important too for solving cases, matching up those dental records. Pathology, that's your medical examiner. That's where, if you're going to medical school, a lot of you are want to stay interested in forensics. You go into pathology and then follow on specializing in forensic pathology, which would be a medical examiner. Here's where Dr. Baker and I fall into. We're physical anthropologists. Here at Baylor, they call us forensic anthropologists, but in reality, we are physical anthropologists. And then you've got psychiatry, which my husband loves when he goes to meetings with me to go to that session. He thinks it's extremely interesting. Question documents, and then, of course, toxicology. All of these fall under the Academy of Forensic Science. We tried to incorporate all of these areas into our major and to give a little bit of each one into the whole curriculum. And I think we have succeeded in doing that through our, not only our classes that we offer, but our internships and seminars. It's like somebody's outside. Okay, let's go now to what a physical anthropologist or a forensic anthropologist does. We work alongside with the medical examiner. A medical examiner actually looks at bodies that have flesh on them. If you look at the individual that's brought in, you can recognize that person as being human. You can recognize what color of hair they have, what color eyes they have, their stature, their weight, all those kinds of things that could help you bring that victim to the perpetrator or to the crime scene. We are called in when a body is decomposed to the point where you cannot tell who it is. I don't mean to be morbid in any way, and I don't mean to be gross in any way. This is just what we do. There's someone needs to do it, and I think that I feel very grateful that we are able to do this kind of thing, to bring a grieving family to an end so they can start the process of getting on with their lives. Basic questions that we ask are the remains that are brought to us human? Or when we go out, are they human? You all are very proficient in that, every single one of you. 95% of the bones that are brought to our lab turn out to be human bones. People find them in their garbage and think they've got a dead person that somebody's trying to get rid of. That's one of the main things we teach in human osteology. And you all go out and eat your chicken and turkey at Thanksgiving. Are very popular at home, I know. Okay, what were the physical characteristics of this person? As physical anthropologists, we're able to determine that from the skeletal material that we find. We can determine sex, age, ethnicity. We don't call ethnicity race. Race, we believe as anthropologists, you have to have a biological basis for race, and there is no biological basis for race. Race is a continuous variable, and you cannot put people into discrete groups. So we look at ethnicity or ancestral background. We can determine the stature of a person and if they were left or right-handed. We also, what else do we do? Are there any pathologies or anomalies on that body that could tie them to the missing individual, such as were they heavy workers? Did they have heavy muscle buildup anywhere on their bones? How many children, that we could actually determine how many children a woman had during her lifetime. Okay, questions regarding circumstances of death. This is a weird little thing. Okay, when did the death occur? What do we call that? Postmortem interval, PMI. It's very important, especially in our program, where we use our forensic entomology to determine this. Is that where the person died, at that burial site, or were they moved someplace else? And was the grave disturbed? And what was the manner of death? Was it homicide, suicide, accidental, or was it a natural death? Okay, I put this slide up first whenever I teach this type of lesson. It personifies to me the whole forensic anthropology thing. You've got, well, I usually ask you questions, but I'm going to tell you. You've got a weapon here. You've got some blood on it. You've got an arm and a hand holding the weapon coming up out of the ground, but you have no leaves on top of it, so this is probably the secondary burial site. You've got, might have been a weapon used. We're going to check Dr. Baker's going to check the blood for the DNA, see if she could match it up. And then we've got this hand coming out. Well, what's strange about that hand? It's non-human, isn't it? That's not a human hand. Did anybody think it was? Okay. Then this is what we are really good at. You all are really good at. We can take a cranium and we can get so much information from it. What's the first thing we look at? We look at this nasal suture up here. The shape of this nasal suture gives us so much information. The nasal overgrowth right here. We like to stick our fingers into people's noses. You know why? Because this gives us a lot of information, doesn't it? We look at the zygomatics. Do they go back very quickly? Do they retreat? Are they flaring? Are they very close to the face? We like to put our fingers under our noses, don't we? And we like to look at the room. Put your finger under your nose right now. If you've got a lot of room right here, you probably have a lot of European ancestry. Let's see Dean Daniel do this one. Okay. If you don't have a lot of room, you've probably got some Asian ancestry. So that's a little trick that helps you determine ethnicity. For determining sex from the cranium, we have a rating scale where we give numbers to certain characteristics, such as the size of the mastoid process. Stick our finger inside the eye orbits. Is it sharp or is it rounded? We look at this occipital protuberance back here. Is it present or is it absent? Just different things that you can give scores to. The shape of the mandible. You can go from a score of 1 to 5. You add them up. If it's closer to 1, then it's most likely female. If it's closer to 5, of course, it's most likely male. Okay, then looking at ethnicity. Again, we look for traits such as the nasal suture, putting your fingers in the nose, or retreating or flaring zygomatics. We have a bony buildup here, which we call the nasal seal. Is it present or is it absent? Here it's absent. We call it nasal guttering. If you poured water from the back of the cranium, it would flow out. If it's settled in here, it would be a pool of water. That's a certain ethnic characteristic. Again, you're looking at the flaring zygomatics, the prognathic face. Many different things. Here you've got an African American, a European, and Asian descent, and you already know who that is, who they are. We do teach or have classes on gunshot entry and exit wounds. Okay, very characteristic of a female mandible and a male mandible. This is one of the most important bones in our body for identification. Medical examiner will take hacksaw, cut off the pubic symphysis right here, send it to a forensic anthropologist for analysis, and so much information can be gained from that. I'll go into that in just a minute. This is what has been cut out and sent to the medical examiner's office. And the first thing we do is we take our finger, of course these are about this big, and we put our finger up to it. If we have a very slight angle, we've got a male. If we've got an angle that, and I am tall, here, see how it juts back? That's totally female. It's a subpubic cavity opening. Of course, in females, it's much wider. But there's an easy test for it. Just put your finger up to it. Do you have a big opening? Here's definitely a female, definitely male. It's really not right for me to say definitely. Nothing's definite in forensics. Okay, from just a fragment of a femur, and from a humerus, and from a tibia, you can get the stature of a person. That's what I'm demonstrating right here. Just a fragment from the end of it. From the end of a tibia, you can get the little malleus on the end of the bone and get the total stature of the person. You can take the metacarpal out of your hand, out of your victim's hand, and you can determine stature. You can take the heel bone, the calcaneus up here, and determine sex. Just from bones like that. That's what we learn in forensic anthropology. This poor individual, this is something else our students are all taught to do. This is the tibia and this is the fibula. It's been fused at the bottom. It's got a lot of bony overgrowth. This guy was hit by a train, his leg was amputated and did not go to the doctor. Oops, we get to back up and see if we can do that. Okay, do you have arthritis? This is what your bone looks like. Did you break your bone and you didn't have it set? This is what it looks like. Okay, from our great innominate that I was showing you before, where we cut off this is worn away, this is a very old bone, so our pubic symphysis is missing. But here we put our finger inside the sciatic notch. If we can move our finger around in there, we've got a female. If it's just a very small opening, it's male. But we really look to this surface right here. This is the pre-auricular surface. If it's got a very defined edge, we can age this person. If it's got a lot of activity out there on the retroauricular surface, we can age that person by, if it doesn't have it or if it does, and the stages in between. And you can get the age down to within just a few years. Tanner Whitehouse method. Sorry for the crooked slide, but we had to put this presentation together very quickly. Children's bones aren't completely fused until the age of, in their hands until the age of 18. The rest of their bones, some don't fuse until the age of 29. So a lot of you in here don't have all your bones fused. So we use the Tanner Whitehouse method. I happened to be in Miami, Florida when ValueJet went down. We got to observe, and Baylor students got to observe the remains that were recovered. Because the plane went down at a 75-degree angle and so fast and hit that mud in the Everglades so hard, people were shoved to the front of the plane and pulled back up through the jet engines. So only little tiny pieces of skin were recovered, and hair and bones. There were 15 children on board that plane. All 15 children were positively ID'd by the Tanner Whitehouse method. Okay, another ethnic thing I like to do with everyone is to put your tongue behind your two central incisors, your two front teeth. Do they shovel back, or are they flat across the back? If they shovel in, then you've got some Asian heritage. If they're flat, you've got European heritage. Mine happen to shovel in. And it often frightens me because I think if I was to die and decompose and nothing was really left of my teeth, and there was a little Asian lady lost in Indiana, they might think it was me. When 5'9", 5'10", I really don't look very Asian, and I might not be identified. Hopefully Laurie would come do DNA on me. Okay, another characteristic of not a total population, just in some Native Americans, you will find this extra suture up here, which we call the Inca bone. This is just looking at postmortem and antemortem tooth loss. I'm going to go through that kind of quickly. Here's a nice mandible. Who does that belong to? My husband. It's rather large. He's rather large. Is it? Oh, speak up. Nobody's here but us. No, it's non-human. Come on. Okay, another great thing that forensic anthropologists are good at is it perimortem trauma? Did it happen at the time of death? Did this have anything to do with the death of this individual? Or is it antemortem? Did it happen before the person died? Or is it postmortem? Did it happen long after the person died or several days after they died? So we put the bone under a microscope, and if it's white inside, it's postmortem, happened after death. If it's the same color, brown, then it's perimortem, happened at time of death. Terrible slide, but I keep it because I love it, and I can't find this bone in my lab anymore since we moved. But look at this slide, and then look at this slide. Now look at them one more time and tell me the difference. They're identical except for one thing: claws at the end of the fingers. And I actually had one of these bones brought into my lab, and I said, wow, it's a human metacarpal. I said, but let me look at it for a while. Something's bothering me about it. Looked at it, and I thought, this is the first time it's happened to me, but it's absolutely amazing. You find a lot of this during bear season. This is a bear claw. Looks almost identical to a human hand. This can be very confusing. We get a lot of this kind of stuff too. What happened to this poor individual? We got blood on the face, we've got some mummified skin, but this is actually a case where it was called out with the local police department. Okay, when we examine it, all of us in here that are forensic people, we look in here, well, there's some mold in the eye orbits. Well, that's kind of weird. And what in the world would you have feathers going through your zygomatics? That's not really too weird. It's weird, but how do you explain it? Halloween prank. That skull's cranium's been sitting on somebody's fireplace for a long time. Okay, this becomes very important in a minute. If you see bone with a spider web cracking on it, the person was burnt with flesh, without flesh on their body. You also see longitudinal cracking, burned without flesh on the body. If they're burned with flesh on the body, you're going to have transverse cracks going across. I'll show you a burnt case like this in just a minute. We don't just teach forensic anthropology. We teach blood spatter, where our students become very proficient at determining if it's cast-off blood, if it came in at a high force, if it just dropped off the body, what direction the force came from. We even have students that, when they're taking the class and demonstrate so forcefully how to do that they shoot blood into pictures in the Holiday Inn pictures on the wall, and it seeps down into it, and it was very embarrassing, and I won't name that person who's sitting here. We have gunshot residue. This is also forensic photography. We have do stuff with you can go to the medical examiner's office and you can work with the ME to determine what goes on during an autopsy. This person happened to be shot with a shotgun. Okay, and I'm going to warn you, the next picture, if I already see my daughter with her head down because she says she needs psychological help for what her mother does. The next picture is graphic, so don't look at it if it's going to upset you, but it's what our students have to learn how to do and how to cope with. Okay, this woman, we need to determine if this was a homicide or if this was a suicide. If it was a homicide, which it appears to be because the gun shot was coming in this way and exiting that side of her face. If it was a suicide, the gun would be under her chin or inside of her mouth. Okay, it was determined that later that the gun had slid to the side and it was a suicide. I know, my daddy, I'm sorry. But this woman was actually alive. Yes. Okay, this ultraviolet light is fantastic for really looking at abused children. This light will pick up bruises underneath the skin 6 months after a child has been beaten when there's no obvious marks left on the body that you could ever see with regular eyesight. So we have examined this body and we've found this bruise, which is very, very old, which you could not see before. But you always want to look for where the ruler is located. That's what the good information is. Okay, this is looking inside his scalp where he had a blow to the head along with that bruise on his chest. There's mold growing inside there, and this area of the country where that mold grows at a certain rate. Therefore, you can determine PMI or postmortem interval or time since death. And that mold showed that he had been out for 2 weeks. The bruise showed that he had been hit by a certain type of SUV. So that's how you put cases together with these several different methods. This woman, I want to show it because this is called lividity. She had fallen off of her porch and she was laying face down in the dirt. The only other person in her home was a maid. So the maid was going to be convicted for involuntary manslaughter or whatever, a homicide. So she's sent to the ME's office. She has no previous record of any kind of medical problems. And that's when you go to the medical examiner's office. This was also found. Her arm was torn up. And did the maid cause this? Was there a struggle? Were these defense wounds? Well, what we found out was that when the EMTs picked her up to put her into the body bag to transport her to the medical examiner's office, she was an older woman and her skin had slipped. So she died a natural death of a heart attack, but she still has to go to the medical examiner's office. We study crime scenes. We study trace evidence, matching the shoe print up, gunpowder residue. This man shot his wife and then committed suicide. You can tell by the cellular pattern of the entry wound, and you also know it's a close contact wound, don't you, because of the black powder around the edge. Now, this is also to demonstrate something else. We do not, and we train our students, when you do forensic photography, to not take pictures like this to court because it will repulse the jury. You don't want to taint the jury's opinion. So you would clean up all of this blood and just zero in on that one small picture right there. Here's forensic photography, stop action photography. This is adipocere tissue. When we do a walk line, which you'll see in a minute, this is what we're looking for. It's the fatty tissue in a body will turn to adipocere and gives off a very distinct odor. This case we did long before we had the forensic science major. This is our anthropology students. These are actually, the flags are demonstrating where actual pieces of bone are found in a creek bed where the water runs in and it runs out, like monthly. So at a time, what's suspected is that when the water was in there, there were a couple of wine bottles found around there too. So they suspected that he was probably drunk and that he jumped into the water to go swimming because his shirt was found there. What was strange about this case, and this is where your forensic thinking starts to come in, his shirt was inside out, which you would think if you were getting ready to go swimming, you'd take your shirt off and it'd be inside out. But then he meticulously rebuttoned it backwards. So I held it up and I said, well, this is obviously the working of a certain kind of individual. Who would do something like that? Take a shirt off and then meticulously sit there and button it backwards again. Someone that had recently escaped from the mental hospital? But it's not a joke in the sense of that. It's a joke. I mean, you've got to investigate, don't we? We've got to stop and think of all these clues we can find around the crime scene. Am I totally out of my mind? And now this is it right here. Crazy guy, crazy. He shot his brother-in-law, went to jail, read a bunch of law books, got out of jail in 10 years, took over some land, lived on it with a man and his wife. He didn't own the land, and he had an arsenal of guns that more than anybody in the county owned, and the sheriff would not even enter his land. He was so afraid of him. So one day, the husband returns, and I'll give you this guy's first name. His name is Bo. Okay, Bo is there with the wife. The man, or husband, accuses Bo of trying to kiss his wife, and they get in a scuffle. Well, the husband accidentally kills Bo. He stuffs Bo down a well. It's about this big around, and it's a well that Bo had built himself, and he said, I threw him head first down into the well. So they put him in jail. And he says his wife had nothing to do with this. She got off. So a year later, he wants to get out of jail, and he said, if you'll go dig down in the well, you'll find him with a lot of cement blocks and old wheels on top of him. So they go down about 20 feet. They find nothing. They said, you're lying. Forget it. You know, this is not real. Next year, he begs again, please, if you go down another 30 feet, you're going to find him. They go down another 30 feet, and that's when we were called in. And they had 2 rescuers being lowered down into the well by a line of prisoners from Huntsville was the closest prison, Gatesville, Huntsville. 250 male prisoners were lowering these rescuers, 2 guys, down into the well. The well was getting ready to cave in. Water was seeping in through the edges. This is a homemade well. They had drained it, but it was still seeping in. You go down, they were being lowered down with a bucket between their legs, and the only thing holding on to them were these prisoners, 250 of them. So one of the guys, and these 2 guys are the ones that have found baby Jessica. I don't know if it was before your time, but do you remember baby Jessica? That was the little baby that was found. They had actually found her body. One of the guys, this next slide I think explains what happened. This bone right here was pulled out, and the people that were going through the buckets, before I could look over there, he threw this bone to the side, and somebody said, oh, that's just a chicken bone. I went over there and I looked, and I said, no, that's a metatarsal. That's a bone out of your foot. So, oh, there's somebody in this well, or something that's human in this well, because this is a chicken bone, and this is a metatarsal. So the guy, then we started pulling out the tibia and fibula, everything from here down. And it made sense because he said I threw him in head first, and then I threw all the stuff in on top of him. So it made sense that we were finding these long bones. Well, one of the 2 rescuers just freaked out. He said, I can't do this anymore. And the smell was starting to get a little bad too. He said, I can't do it. I just can't do it. And I went, I want to do it. I want to do it. And I said, but you're so claustrophobic, you can't get in an elevator. You know, you hate close places, you hate heights, you hate to swim, you hate water, you hate darkness, you hate, you know, you're scared to death of all these things. Why are you saying this? Why are you doing this? So I get suited up, and this guy's showing me what to do. And it's all a big biohazard area because the guy's been down there for 2 years. Okay, adrenaline's going really fast because you're excited. Then it's like, no, I really don't want to do this. Well, you're suited up. Somebody's got to go down there. And what better, person to go down there is an anthropologist. So when I feel down into that mud, I know what I'm feeling. So I go down the line of the prisoners. This is the honest to goodness truth. Hi, how are you? My name is Susan. Do you have any children? Who's your mother? What's your father? What did you have for lunch? And what's your name? Hi, it's so nice to meet you. So I had a personal relationship with every one of these prisoners so that when I went down there, my life was in their hands. It was so dangerous that no one could even look in to watch you as you were being lowered down, because if your glasses fell or binoculars fell or anything fell in there, it would hit you on the head and knock you out, and they couldn't get you out. So I'm slowly being lowered down there. I get to the bottom. Heart is going, and you know how my heart does that. I got to the bottom, got down in the mud, got the bucket between my legs, leaned down and get really deep into that mud, and I can feel the end of the femur. I know it's a left femur. I can feel the right femur. I try to dislodge it. With all my womanly strength, I try to dislodge it, and I holler up, I'm not strong enough to pull this man out. So up I come. And the other guy goes down, and he is strong enough to dislodge it. I probably could have gotten him out, but what a way to get up out of that well. At least I found him. That was the scariest thing I've ever done in my whole life. This is Bo. He was so well preserved. Okay, the bottom of his legs are missing, but his Oshkosh overalls, his Hanes underwear, everything was in perfect condition because he was in limestone water. Here he is being put in the body bag, and the justice of the peace has just announced him dead. We take him to the local funeral home because he would have to go about 600 miles to the nearest ME's office, so we're going to do a quick autopsy to see if we can find any bullets in his body. Here we're going through adipocere tissue to see if we can find any bullets. He had been said to have been shot once in the head, so we've removed the cranium and looking for any bullets in the head, and he had a gold bridge, and here's his gold bridge. So. I'm tired of going down in wells. See, now that I've gotten older, I don't have to do this anymore. So now the students go down in the wells. This was a case of a man was supposedly thrown down in the well about 20 or 30 years before, and we had a lot of brave students that day. Their lives were not in danger. It just looks that way, but they really weren't. Here, our first one goes down, and we had the other one going down. Then I went down. I took off my boots and went down and used my feet to go down into, and legs to go down into the mud to get down really deep. They were not, I don't think, being a primate behaviorist, I've used my feet a lot. So I can feel about as much with my feet as I can with my hands. But we did not discover anything that day. This is a very hot summer day. We were actually, Baylor students and myself were flown on the DPS helicopter to this site in Lampasas. Very exciting. A man had been rolled in a blanket, burned to death. Okay, here we've gridded off the site. We've put bags into each one of the grids, and this is a pile of pig manure that I'm going through because it looks like a grave site. This is tiny little limestone rocks, and you know that limestone rocks look a lot like burnt bone. And burnt bone at a certain temperature, 800 degrees Celsius, is white, isn't it? It's calcined bone, so, and it's very shrunken. Okay, so it's going to look a lot like the rocks. Could you pick bone out of that? Well, we have a Texas Ranger out there with us, and you know the attitudes of those Texas Department of Public Safety people. Okay, and this one, oh, he was going to find the first bone. And then we talk about, there's the guy up there that's hoovering around saying, I don't know if you're going to or not. We bring it back to the lab, and this is what we have. Now, how do you find anything in that? It's going to be white, like the limestone rock. But when we meticulously pick through it, this is probably the rug he was burned in. These are probably scissors in his pocket. This is the bone that the Texas Ranger found, that he was so proud of because he had found the first one. It's a piece of plastic. Here's our first bone that we did find. It's part of a long bone, and look at those nice transverse fractures, burnt with the flesh on. Then we found a tiny piece of the humerus. This is the normal one, and see how this is not quite as white. It was not burned at as high of a temperature. Tiny little lunate. It's about smaller than a marble, half the size of a marble. Part of the cervical vertebrae. So now we have a homicide case. When cases were operated in a closet and draper. This, I don't know if Dean Daniel remembers this, but he had a lot to do with it, and I'll go through this one really quick. We dedicated our lab to Sherry. Sherry, we were called down to the medical examiner's office because she had a blow to the head, and the medical examiner did not know if that was a gunshot wound or if that was blunt force trauma. So we go down and look at it, and if it was a gunshot wound, first of all, you're going to have an entry or an exit wound. Well, you've only got this one wound right here. You would have to have what else? If you didn't have an exit wound, you'd have to have a bullet in the head. It had neither. Sherry was found. Here's another view of her cranium. Her mandible and maxilla. That's what was left of her body after 2 months. We go through her hair to find if there's any leaves or bugs or pupa cases that are not indigenous to that area. That's a very important part of the case. Now, Sherry's important because she was found under a group of trees in a neighborhood in a very populous town close to here. And she had been gingerly laid under a group of trees. Next to her was a little bag that had her birth certificate and a ponytail clip inside of it. So someone obviously wanted this young girl found. She turned out to be 36 years old. Her mother donated her body to us. If she wanted most of the body, she was going to donate the bones to us. So we transport the bones back to the Baylor campus, and we call the chemistry department, and their fume hoods are all being used. The biology department's fume hoods are all being used. And so we don't really know what to do because we're just starting out doing forensic cases for the Texas Rangers. So this is where she was found. Our students did go out there and find one of her fingers that had been left by the local sheriff's department. So we go to Bobby Boudreau at the local mortuary here in town, and he says that we can use his freezer room to keep her there for a while. And his freezer room happened to be connected to his bedroom, which is connected to his kitchen and his mortuary, all in one house. And after 3 days, he said, "You're going to have to get rid of her, so what do we do? Where are we going to take her? We have no place to macerate these bones." So the kind husband says, we didn't really ask him. We just went home, started to try to take care of it on our barbecue pit at home, because we really had nothing. We had no place. And it got worse. We actually ended up taking the bones to the front porch of our house. We lived at that time in downtown Waco, and we had a screened-in porch with the mailbox right next to where the hot plates were sitting, and the mailman would drop the mail in every day. We don't live down anymore, and word is from one of our associate deans that Dean Daniel saw these pictures or heard about these pictures and said that will never happen again, and he is responsible for us having that unbelievable lab and a beautiful $10,000 fume hood. Do you remember that? Okay. So our lab is dedicated to Sherry, and we have a plaque hanging on the wall should her mother ever want to come visit, and it says, "No greater gift can a mother give." This case, the cranium was found at a certain area. The person that was suspected of killing this missing woman lived on, or had this deer lease. These are all local PD or Texas Rangers from this area. They had been up all night looking for her body that was supposedly buried out here, and they had infrared photography going on all night. They were looking for hot spots. So they found a lot of hot spots. They flagged them, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, we came out, and they turned out to be cow patties and limestone rock because they collect heat during the day and give heat off at night. Yes, at night. So I said, "Go away. You guys go search someplace else. I just want to go by myself," because you got to get inside the head of the person, the perpetrator, and thought he's not going to take a long time to get rid of this body. He's going to do it very quickly. So I started at the entrance to the land, and I saw this, and from where you're sitting, you might be able to see it too. This is a very dark area, and it's lighter. Took my trowel, put it down just a few inches, scooped it up, and found some dead leaves. This was an extremely high-profile case. We got to the point where we're just excavating the grave. Some of our Texas Rangers back there started throwing up, and I said, "Would you please go get me my ham sandwich and my Diet Coke?" So they now call me the lady that eats her ham sandwich and drinks a Diet Coke. When they call me out on cases, that's who they ask for. Okay, he had double bagged her in 2 bags. She had no fly activity in there, which told us what? That she was in an air-conditioned room with all the windows shut when she was murdered. Cadaver dog kept hitting on this tank right here because they wanted to find, he had cut off her arms and legs and gutted and skinned her like a deer. So they wanted to find her arms and legs. So they get this little pump here with this little fire truck and try to drain this tank and make us go out into, the Baylor students, myself, go out into this tank and dredge it. It was about 3 feet deep. And they brought the Channel 25 helicopter down. It might have been Channel 10, I don't know. They brought it down to move the scum off the water. And as soon as the helicopter took off, the scum came right back, and my boots got stuck in the murk, and I fell backwards. And that's the only time you can tell a Texas Ranger, call off the case. We don't need the arms and legs. Why did we not need the arms and legs? Because we'd already know who the perpetrator was. We already had the victim. So that case was solved. This I'm going to just go through. This is how you determine blunt force trauma to a skull, matching up those wounds up there. We had some very young freshman students working this case, and I was so proud of them that they figured out that a hammer caused those wounds. This is a cadaver dog we worked with recently, and he kept picking up roadkill down on the I-35. Okay, gray murders. Have you ever heard of gray murders? Any sociologists? So many people are sent from nursing homes. They're a caregiver at the nursing home. A nurse will say, if you let me go home with you, I would take care of you and I will charge you much less. And they'll take them home, collect their Social Security checks, and let the person die. And this is so, so common, and I've been to many meetings and seminars on this, that the amount of elderly that die at home of homicides is much, much higher than we could ever imagine. And they find people back in their rooms that have starved to death with maggot growth on them when they're not even dead. And I happened to work a case recently with about 20 of our students that was the same thing. A man had disappeared from his home, and he was gone for 2 months. And he was last seen at the local bingo parlor. And we were called out when they actually found the body, and we were recovering the body. And I asked the question, what are those people right there, like 50 feet away, standing on their back porch doing? And the police said, well, that's the family of the man. And I said, but he's right here behind the house. You've been searching for him for 2 months. I know, isn't that weird? I said, well, this is a homicide. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. So this little East Texas town, it's still probably it's a natural death. He wandered out of the house. He was known to have Alzheimer's, but I think that we need to put more emphasis on gray murders, and there's a lot of research out there to be done in investigating this type of thing. This is just a picture of his that's the back of the head I put in here. We use suture closure too to age individuals. Suture closure a good way to age individuals. I can't hear you. Okay, right here, if you've ever had sinus, this is the same individual. His sinus really bad. Just wanted to put that, show you, if you get a sinus infection, get it taken care of. Get on some antibiotics quickly. This is, I think this is the last case. The most famous case Baylor Forensic Science program was ever involved with was the McDuff serial killer. By the way, I want to preface or finish these cases with all these cases have been solved. They've gone to court and they're over, so we can use them for educational purposes. McDuff case, this was his first victim. We recovered him, or recovered her. Some photos from the scene. It's interesting because when you're working with a serial killer, it can get very, very emotional, and you try to not get too involved. Now, I know these students would freak out if they knew I was showing this photo. But what they're doing is the TV had found out about this case, and they were flying over. So they're trying to hide the recovery scene so that with this, what I just showed you wouldn't be on TV at the time. This was his signature. Every time he tied someone up, he'd tie their legs together and their hands together and make them walk to their execution site. But he tied exactly 120 knots on each ligature. Isn't that interesting? That was his signature. Watch out for people that like to tie knots. have a lot of research going on here. This goes on behind our lab. We buried a pig 4 feet down. Our pig did pass through the Animal Care and Use Committee. We put sensors under the body to collect moisture and temperature for a whole year's time. Found out that after 14 days, the body will start to decline in giving off heat, and at day 30, it correlates exactly with the ambient temperature and the moisture. This is pictures from Dr. Baker's lab when she was first moving in, but she is teaching a class before all of her supplies have arrived. And the students absolutely learned so much from this class. And we had so many students that as soon as they graduated in December, were employed in major laboratories. We're so excited to have her here. We're looking at bodies in aquatic systems. We've got pig legs and arms that have been put through different types of trauma, blunt force trauma. Kathleen Street is out here right now. She's the one doing this research. Blunt force trauma, run over by a car, sharp knife, and I can't remember what the other was, but sharp knife trauma. And Kathleen plans on pulling those bones out after a year and seeing if you can still determine what type of trauma was done to the bone. Forensic entomology, we put fluorescent spray on our flies on each pig, and a different color fluorescent spray, and take the pig, not the pig, catch the flies, take the flies as far away as probably our football stadium is that's off campus. Those flies return to their same pig within 2 hours. This is amazing. Same colored fly would return to the same pig that it was assigned to. Must like its pig. This is just some pictures from our forensic entomology class. It's our most popular seminar that we do put on. It prepares a student to handle the cases that they're going to go out on, to see if this is what they really want to do for the rest of their life, and just to be exposed to a very interesting, I think, class. It's put on through with Texas A&M University, Dr. Jim Olson. Students learn to identify maggots by their shape. They can look at a maggot and tell you what kind of adult fly it's going to turn into, because certain flies come on in certain succession. When I was a little girl, my sister used to chase me with the World Book Encyclopedia if it had a big caterpillar on it, and I used to run and scream through the house. Now, you just play with maggots. It's no big deal. And then we take our research to meetings and we present it. This is a computer analyst, and he's in his 3rd year of medical school. Here's Case, our cadaver dog for a while. Now comes my most favorite part of the story. We're at the end now. I wanted to show the university that when we first started out, and even to this day, a lot of people will go, this is just a fad, but you so nicely said it wasn't. I thank you so much. But we get that from lots of people out in the public and from students coming in. It's my child, if they come to Baylor, are they going to be employable? Are they going to get into medical school? Are they going to get into law school or graduate programs? And so I put together this, I gave the names to Erin Slinkman, the computer guru, and she put together this, and I think it's absolutely beautiful, and it's such a demonstration of where you go when you finish the forensic science major at Baylor.
can be. Raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand.
See, you thought it was over, didn't you? Look at it. Raise me up to more than I can be. This is only half of them. Wait a minute. That's only half. That's the other half. Come on, you guys. Thank you so much for this award that you have given me, and I hope you go out and you conquer the world, and I love every single one of you. Thank you so, so much.